Hello space fans, welcome to Space Command. My name is Brian and today we're going to be talking about Sierra Nevada Corporation and the Dream Chaser. They had a big press conference this morning and unveiled the new structure of the Dream Chaser space plane, and that was pretty exciting. So I want to share with you some of the news that we have coming out of that press conference. But first, I want to mention, hey, it's been 3,008 days since the United States has been able to transport astronauts from U.S. soil on U.S. spacecraft to the International Space Station and bring them back. So 3,008 days and counting, and that was since the Space Shuttle Atlantis landed in 2011, and it's retired now and on display at the Kennedy Space Center. Although that was the last time that we were able to transport our astronauts to the International Space Station. Since that time, of course, you know, we've been using the Russian Soyuz capsule and purchasing seats on that capsule for $86 million per seat to transport our astronauts. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Well, let's talk about some space weather first here before we get started. Today on Mars, it's a balmy negative 18 degrees Fahrenheit, and the low is negative 115 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a sunny day though, and the sunrise was at 5:53 this morning. The sun will set at 5:35 this afternoon, and the ultraviolet radiation index is low. That's a good thing, right? All right, so today is Sol number 2556 on Mars. Sol 2556. So if you're going to be out, make sure you wear a coat. Negative 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Pretty chilly, kids. All right. Well, let's talk about Sierra Nevada Corporation and this press conference they held this morning in Colorado, out of Louisville, Colorado. That's where they're out of. And of course, they are the ones who designed and developed the Dream Chaser space plane. Now let's give a little history on the Dream Chaser for you. In the previous video that I did, we covered it a little bit. And I'm going to put up an image here of the Dream Chaser space plane for you so you can see what we're talking about. But the Dream Chaser was developed as part of the NASA Commercial Crew contract, and they didn't make the cut for that program to transport our astronauts from U.S. soil in a U.S. spacecraft to the International Space Station and return them. But Boeing and SpaceX did make the cut for that, and so they'll be transporting our astronauts back and forth from the International Space Station. They're not doing it yet, but they're getting closer and closer every day. And we're cheering them on. We are cheering them on. Go SpaceX. Go Boeing. We know you can do it. Of course, it's looking like that's not going to happen this year. It's looking like we're not going to be able to launch any astronauts into space until early 2020. And that's disappointing. But that's what we've got. Anyway, back to Dream Chaser. So Dream Chaser wasn't selected for the Commercial Crew program, but they continued to develop the Dream Chaser on their own, and they have invested almost $1 billion into this vehicle of their own money, of their own corporation's money, without help from NASA on that part, of course. And so kudos to Sierra Nevada Corporation for continuing on and keeping the dream alive on the Dream Chaser. But now, excitingly, NASA has chosen Sierra Nevada Corporation and the Dream Chaser to be part of the Commercial Cargo program too, which will transport cargo, experiments, and supplies to the International Space Station and return back down here to the ground and land on a runway with precious experiments and cargo, so that NASA can get to that equipment very quickly there on the ground. So that's very exciting, and that was part of the announcement here this morning. There'll be 6 different missions that they're contracted for to deliver supplies up there to the International Space Station, and they expect that the first of those missions will take place. Let's see. Oh, the first of those missions will take place in September, probably 2021. So 2021. And another part of the press conference this morning was unveiling the new superstructure for the Dream Chaser. That's right, there were some changes they needed to have made to the body of the space plane. For this new contract, since they're not going to be transporting astronauts or crew to the International Space Station, they'll be transporting cargo and experiments. So the previous version of the Dream Chaser had windows. Of course, it's going to have windows. It's a space plane, right? Naturally, you'd think there's going to be windows up there. So they removed the windows since they're not going to be transporting people at this point. They're going to be transporting the cargo. So they removed the windows and they added a quick access hatch in the rear of the space plane. What that's for is for some of these time sensitive and perishable experiments that they're working on up there on the space station. And a lot of it is alive. So a lot of experiments, that they conduct on mice, and they also grow cultures of different bacteria and so forth on the space station as part of experiments. And they've got to have quick access to that stuff as it returns here to the surface because it's time sensitive. And you don't want that stuff to die. You got to get it back to the lab for processing. So the Dream Chaser, it launches on top of a rocket, and in this case, let's see, in this case it's going to be on a new Vulcan rocket that's being developed by the United Launch Alliance company. So it's going to launch on the Vulcan rocket, and the first stage will separate. The space plane will ignite its rocket and enter orbit, and then it will dock with the International Space Station, and then it'll transfer the cargo and supplies and the experiments, and then it'll be loaded back up with returning stuff, and then it'll re-enter the atmosphere, and it re-enters the atmosphere with a very low G trajectory, so that it's very gentle. It's not a violent re-entry into the atmosphere like you normally picture with the fire and all that. I mean, it's going to be hot, I'm telling you, but it's a low G re-entry, so it's a good deal. And then they land. It turns into a glider, and it glides to a landing strip, a conventional landing strip. So that is the awesome thing about the Dream Chaser, is it can pretty much land on just about any commercial runway that it needs to deliver some of these time-sensitive experiments. And the European Space Agency is very interested in that capability. They've not been able to have that ability to have experiments and cargo returned there in Europe. They always have to have it returned here to the United States and then transported over to Europe from there. So they're very interested in the Dream Chaser as well. So once it lands here on the runway, NASA will be able to get to this quick access hatch in the rear of the space plane to retrieve those time-sensitive experiments that are back there and get them to the lab for processing. So that's terrific and awesome. There were several different delegates there from the different companies that had a hand in developing the Dream Chaser and making this presentation possible. There were people there from Lockheed Martin, who actually built the superstructure of the Dream Chaser, the redesign, and they're located in Colorado also. So that's a good deal. There were also representatives there from the United Launch Alliance, and they're the ones who are developing the rocket that the Dream Chaser will be transported up on, and that's the Vulcan rocket again. And United Launch Alliance is also located in Colorado. So all three of those corporations are in Colorado: Sierra Nevada, Lockheed Martin, and the United Launch Alliance, all from Colorado. So that's terrific. Some of the details that they provided at the press conference were some logistics. For example, the Dream Chaser is going to launch and be able to transport 12,100 pounds of cargo up to the International Space Station. And it'll be able to return 4,000 pounds of cargo and experiments back to the runway. So that's a pretty good deal. The actual vehicle weighs 24,000 pounds loaded and ready to go on launch. And then when it returns, the superstructure of the vehicle will weigh 2,400 pounds. So she's going to lose a little weight on her return back from space. And so that's a good deal also. You could really tell, I just want to mention, Dream Chaser, Sierra Nevada Corporation's dreams for Dream Chaser have always been, and plans have always been, for Dream Chaser to transport passengers, crew, astronauts to space. That has always been their objective and their dream. And you could really see that in the press conference. They mentioned it about 12 different times. And their hope is that there will be another commercial crew contract bid out from NASA to be able to transport astronauts back and forth to the International Space Station. Unfortunately, one of the reporters who was there at the press conference asked Kirk Shireman, who was there from NASA, if Dream Chaser would, or how long it would be before Dream Chaser would be able to transport astronauts. And he really was unambiguous with that question. He wasn't really able to answer one way or the other, because NASA's plans for the International Space Station, frankly, they're really not that extensive, because the International Space Station is already 20 years old. And I don't know how much longer NASA plans on being a participant in the International Space Station. So Mr. Shireman pretty much thought that SpaceX and Boeing, with their commercial crew contract and the space capsules that they've developed, the Crew Dragon and the Starship, or Starliner, I'm sorry, the Starliner, Boeing Starliner, would be able to take care of all the transportation needs that NASA would need back and forth between the International Space Station. And you could see the disappointment on the faces of the officials there from Sierra Nevada Corporation. You really could, because they really want this space plane, the Dream Chaser, to be able to transport astronauts back and forth to space. I believe it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, and I wish them well. I hope that that does actually come to fruition, and I believe it will. It's just a matter of time. They've got to be patient, and we've got to be patient on that. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything that was in the press conference that we needed to cover. I want to thank you for joining us here at Space Command, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And goodbye for now. Thank you. If you like this video, press like, and also don't forget to subscribe, and we'll have more videos like this in the future. Thank you.